The woman we interviewed is my grandma, Bonnie White Conrad. She was a teenager and young adult during the 1960s. This is how she recalls the 1960s.
So, did you vote in any of the elections?
In the 60s, are we talking?
Yes, in the 60s.
I don't recall voting for any. If I did, it would have been for Kennedy.
All right. Why did you not vote in any of the elections?
At the time, being young, I just didn't think it was important. It wasn't really stressed that we go out and vote, but I realize now it was a privilege and I didn't do it.
Mm-hmm. What did you think about LBJ not wanting to run for office again?
That was fine by me. I was not a fan of him or his family, and no one could replace John F. Kennedy as far as I was concerned.
All right. Do you remember when you first heard of JFK's assassination?
I remember exactly where I was. I worked at Duquesne Light at the time, and I was in the hallway, and they announced it, and everyone was pretty hysterical.
Were you very upset?
Yeah, I was very upset. I thought it was a tragic loss. And of course, being 18 at the time, you just didn't hear about things like that. That was the first time, I ever heard of anything as horrible as that.
All right. Did you know anyone in the Vietnam War?
Not personally. I had friends from school that went, and a couple died, but they weren't like very close friends. I just knew of them, which is still very sad.
Do you know if they wanted to go to the war? Because a lot of the men who went were against going to war.
Well, I think a lot of the ones that went wanted to do something for their country. And I think they were doing the draft at that time as well.
Mm-hmm.
Because I think your papa got put on a list, but because he was in college at the time, he didn't have to serve. But there was still a draft at that time. So a lot of them went because they were drafted.
Mm-hmm. Did you agree with sending men to Vietnam? Because a lot of people thought that America should not have been part of the war.
Well, I was never for war of any kind, always anti-war. I never liked it. I didn't see the purpose of it. I just didn't see anything good coming out of it, which nothing did. But, it's just the way they do it.
Did you know the bad conditions over Vietnam?
Yeah, the television was pretty good. The media was pretty good about, at least I thought, of showing what was going on over there. Mm-hmm. And the men that came back were not in real good shape because they used that acid. I forget what that was called now. They used to spray it, and the men died of that. It was horrible. It was terrible what they did over there to people.
Did the people who came back, did they have
PTSD?
Yeah.
Yes, there was a lot of that. Mm-hmm. And of course they didn't come back to good conditions here because they were not welcomed here.
Why?
Which was sad in our own country.
Why didn't people welcome them?
Because people were really against this war and felt we should not have gone. And I couldn't understand why they took it out on the soldiers that were drafted or wanted to go to fight for our country. Mm-hmm. That seemed so wrong to me. Mm-hmm. I just had such conflicting feelings over it. It was just not a good time. It was a terrible war.
Is there anything that you remember specifically about the Vietnam War?
Well, the protests, all the protests and crazy stuff that was going on here in the States due to this war. It just seemed like everybody was at conflict.
Mm-hmm. Can you explain the bracelet that you got?
Yes, during the time of the Vietnam War, you could get a bracelet with a person's name on it for support for them.
Mm-hmm.
And so I wore that every day, and it had a name. I still have it. I have to find it. But it had his name on it. It was private, so-and-so.
Mm-hmm.
And I never knew what happened to him. I should have tried to find out. And maybe I will,
Mm-hmm.
now that you're bringing it up.
Mm-hmm.
But I still have that bracelet.
All right.
This is the bracelet Madison's grandma received. On it, it says his name, Michael Brazelton, and the date his airplane was shot down, which was August 7th, 1966. Michael was a prisoner of war and held captive until he was released March 4th, 1973.
All right. Were you involved in the counterculture?
Not at all.
What were the negative outcomes, if there were any?
Well, there was just, you've heard the term sex, drugs, and all, that's what that was all about, supposedly.
Mm-hmm.
And the carrying on. For what reason, I could never figure out.
Mm-hmm.
Some of the music was all right,
Yeah.
but the actions of it all,
Mm-hmm.
you know, I just couldn't understand. Woodstock, I mean, that's what came out of that up in New York. And it was a gathering of all the hippies at the time. It went on for days, I guess. And that's all they did, was smoke, drink, dance, some half-dressed.
Mm-hmm.
It was a wild time. And I could never understand what it was proving.
Mm-hmm. Like your parents and that generation, what did they think about the people?
They thought they were crazy.
Mm-hmm.
That was so far out of their realm.
Mm-hmm.
You know, my parents grew up in an era where you worked hard
Mm-hmm.
and lived a fairly common life,
Mm-hmm.
nothing too radical. So, I mean, that was pretty radical at the time.
Mm-hmm.
The hippie, you know, their dress, their behavior, all of that stuff just didn't seem to make sense. Yeah.
All right. How did the media portray the civil rights movement?
Well, pretty ugly, but it was kind of biased, I think, too.
Mm-hmm.
They told, I think, more of the white side
Mm-hmm.
than what the African Americans were going through.
Mm-hmm. Did you like ever hear of like Malcolm X for the Black Panthers?
Yes.
Yeah. Did you ever watch any of his speeches or?
I saw him at times. I can't say that I was moved by what he was saying.
Mm-hmm. Did you think women were discriminated against?
I didn't really see it like they did. And I always sort of felt at the time that these women wanted to be more like men.
Mm-hmm.
I understand now
Mm-hmm.
the progress that has been made, because we still are not at equal pay
Mm-hmm.
for men and women.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess that's more what the movement was about.
Mm-hmm.
But at the time, it seemed like they were just fighting to be more like a man than a woman.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess they really weren't.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't understand it at the time.
All right. Well, thank you very much.
Oh, you're very welcome.